A dark van turned the corner at the end of the street. Moved too slowly. Too deliberately. Isabella's instincts sharpened instantly. The van stopped near the sidewalk. For a moment nothing happened. Then the side door slid open. 2 men stepped out. They weren't dressed like the men from Lorenzo's restaurant. These men looked rough. Heavy jackets. Hard eyes. One of them scanned the street until his gaze landed directly on her. "There she is," he muttered. Cold fear shot through Isabella's body. She stood up immediately. Her heart began pounding again. The second man stepped forward with a thin smile. "Been looking for you," he said. Isabella backed away slowly. "I don't know you." The man laughed quietly. "Doesn't matter." Behind him, the other man closed the van door. The street suddenly felt very small. "Come with us," the first man said. His voice wasn't a request. Isabella's hands trembled slightly, but she forced herself to stay calm. "I'm not going anywhere." The man's smile disappeared. "You really think this is a choice?" Isabella turned suddenly and ran. Her shoes slapped against the pavement as she sprinted down the street. Behind her, footsteps exploded into motion. "Grab her!" The shout echoed through the empty road. She ran past dark storefronts and empty benches, her lungs burning as panic pushed her forward. A hand suddenly grabbed the strap of her backpack. The force yanked her backward. She fell hard against the pavement. Pain shot through her arm. Before she could scramble away, one of the men grabbed her wrist tightly. "Enough running," he growled. She struggled, kicking and twisting desperately. "Let me go." The man tightened his grip. "You should have stayed where you belonged." His partner reached for the van. "Just get her inside." Headlights suddenly swept across the street. Car turned the corner sharply. Bright beams flooded the scene. The men froze. A black car rolled to a stop beside them. The engine went quiet. The door opened slowly. A tall figure stepped out. The men recognized him immediately. Their confidence vanished. Lorenzo Ricci walked forward calmly, his coat moving slightly in the night wind. His eyes settled on Isabella first, then on the man holding her arm. His voice was quiet. "Let her go." For a moment no one moved. Then the man released her wrist quickly. Isabella stumbled back, breathing hard. The 2 criminals exchanged nervous looks. Everyone in the city knew Lorenzo's name. Crossing him was never a good idea. One of them tried to laugh awkwardly. "Just a misunderstanding." Lorenzo's expression didn't change. "I don't like misunderstandings," he said softly. The street fell silent again. And for the first time since she escaped the orphanage, Isabella realized something strange. The men who had been chasing her were suddenly afraid. The 2 men backed away slowly. Neither of them looked at Isabella anymore. Their attention remained fixed on Lorenzo Ricci, whose calm presence seemed heavier than the night itself. One of them forced a nervous smile. "Boss, we didn't know she belonged to you." Lorenzo's gaze didn't soften. "She doesn't belong to anyone." The man nodded quickly, stepping backward toward the van. "Of course. Just a misunderstanding." Lorenzo said nothing. But the silence between them carried a warning stronger than any threat. Within seconds the men climbed back into the van. The door slammed shut, and the vehicle sped away down the street without another word. The moment it disappeared, Lorenzo turned his attention back to Isabella. She was still breathing heavily, rubbing the wrist the man had grabbed. "You see," he said quietly. "You are being chased." Isabella didn't answer. But the fear in her eyes had changed. It was no longer just fear of him. It was fear of the truth. Lorenzo studied her for a moment. "Who sent them?" She hesitated. Then slowly she spoke. "The orphanage." The word hung in the air. Lorenzo nodded slightly, as if confirming something he already suspected. "You saw something there." It wasn't a question. Isabella looked down at the ground. "There's a book," she whispered. "A ledger." His expression sharpened slightly. "What kind of ledger?" Her voice trembled. Names, ages, prices. Silence filled the street. Behind Lorenzo, one of his men shifted slightly. Even they understood what those words meant. Lorenzo spoke calmly again. "Where is it?" "In the director's office." He nodded once. That was all he needed. Within an hour, several black cars moved quietly through the dark roads outside the city. The orphanage stood exactly where the report described, an old building surrounded by rusted fencing and tall trees. From a distance it looked peaceful. Inside the lights were still on. Lorenzo stepped out of the car. His men moved with quiet precision, spreading around the building. A moment later the front doors burst open. The director barely had time to stand before Lorenzo walked into the office. The man's face turned pale instantly. "Mr. Ricci, this is unexpected." Lorenzo placed the black ledger on the desk. They had already found it. The director's voice faltered. "I can explain." "You will," Lorenzo replied calmly. Behind them, his men were already opening locked rooms throughout the building. Small frightened faces peeked out from the darkness. Children who had been told they were waiting for adoption. Children who had never left. One by one the doors opened. The truth spread quickly through the building. In the office, the director's hands trembled as Lorenzo flipped open the ledger. Ages, prices. And beside them, the names of powerful buyers. Lorenzo closed the book slowly. "You were selling them," he said. The director collapsed into the chair, unable to speak. Outside, the sound of police sirens began to grow louder. Lorenzo had already made the call. Minutes later, officers flooded the building. The children were led outside into the night air. For the first time in years, the gates of the orphanage opened not to hide secrets, but to set them free.